Okay, I'm doing it. I'm finally doing it. I'm finally making a bird tier list because of the determination of a very particular Happy Dude 7422. Every day, he's been asking for the past 22 days, even 2-day 13s, even 2-day 18s, and 2-day 19s. Let's just take a moment to appreciate Happy Dude 7422 being so persistent about a bird tier list. And here it finally is. Today we're going to be ranking all of the families of birds in North America that I have photos of. Most notably, I don't have a quail, which should be right here. Well, I don't have albatross, but they're barely in North America, mostly in like the Pacific Ocean. So hopefully this is somewhat representative of most of the families. Shout out to Happy Dude 7422 for requesting this for 22 days in a row, probably more. So we're just going to go in order. I spent a few hours just putting these photos in and then labeling them. Please excuse me if I mispronounce the Latin name. You can certainly correct me in the comments. Also, the suffix AE. I'm always so confused. It's either A or E. So let's go. Ducks, geese, and swans. I don't know, there's some exceptions. Like swans are really cool, but sort of aggressive, especially mute swans. But like mallards aren't the best. But I don't know. There's a lot of inconsistencies. We might see that a lot throughout here. I think I'm gonna give it a B tier. Grouse, turkey. I think that's what this family is. I'm gonna give it. I like wild turkey, but they're so elusive, only to me. I think I'm gonna give it also B tier, just behind the ducks, geese, and swans. Next we have the grebes. These grebes, Podicipedidae, they have extremely fantastic mating displays. So this is, I think, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think this is Clark's grebe, not Western. The Clark's grebe and Western grebe, they stand up in the water and then they start running on water together as a pair. So that's their fantastic display. Search up a video if you'd like. So they're super cool. All of the grebes have super interesting mating displays. I think I have to give them either A or S. Doves, pigeons and doves, okay. High B tier or low A tier. I'm gonna give it high B tier for now. Cuckoos, and this is a very interesting family because cuckoos not only includes obviously cuckoos, but also roadrunners and anis. Very different looking birds, but they still have the same structure. Roadrunners, as you might recall from the cartoon, it's this very funny looking thing that runs across the road and runs super fast, only in the desert, and it's pretty big. And then anis are dark birds that sort of look like grackles from afar, mostly in South America and like the Caribbean. So it's a very, very unique family. Because of its uniqueness, I have to give it A tier. Okay, nightjars. Some of them make very, very cool noises, like Chuck Will's widow sounds like Chuck Will's widow, and whippoorwill sounds like whippoorwill, as you might have guessed. Common nighthawk sounds like common nighthawk, just kidding. Sounds like a little meep or a buzzy thing. But other than the sound, they have very cool looking flight patterns that almost look like falcons. Common nighthawk is our representative here. High B tier. All of these families are so cool and unique. Apodidae, or swifts. So this is a chimney swift. I don't know if you can tell from the terrible image. They're so hard to capture because they always flutter around. But they're super cool because chimney swifts in particular, they roost in chimneys, and you can see thousands gather at once. And they love insects, so I love that they eat all the insects for us. Actually, a lot of these birds probably do. They're really cool. Okay. Hummingbirds. So this is a super, super good fan favorite, the hummingbirds. Such a diverse family of birds. And they pollinate plants, but a lot of these other birds pollinate plants. I think they're a tiny bit overrated. I mean, I know they're the only bird that can fly backwards, and they flap like a million miles per hour. Don't fact check me on that. But I think their heart beats like 1,000 beats per minute. With that being said, though, I think everybody loves hummingbirds. I know, but some other birds are just underappreciated. So they're not overrated, but they're not underrated either. I think they can have a B tier. Rails. Okay, I love rails. Especially the American coot I chose because this picture showed the massive feet that rails have. So it's very unique to the species because they can either, if it's a coot or something, then, or gallinule, it can pedal through the water, or like a purple gallinule or something, it can walk on wetlands and marsh and lily pads and stuff like that. They are super elusive, especially like Sora, Virginia rail, and yellow rail. But that's a part of what makes them so special. I don't know, I kind of don't want to leave them all in B tier. I can give it A tier because I love coots, I love Sora, I love rails. Limpkin, okay. This is a monotypic family, Aramidae. They eat a lot of apple snails. They have conquered North America, and they're only going to keep on pushing further north. They're super unique, but they're all super unique. It's in its own family, so if I put it low, I'm only going to hurt one bird's feelings, so I might have to put it in C tier. Okay, cranes. Okay, this one's really cool. There's multiple populations of cranes. There's the crane that lives in Florida and then walks around neighborhoods like these, and super friendly, usually super friendly. And there's also the huge migratory flocks of sandhill cranes that nest further north in, like, I don't know, northern Canada, I believe, and then they come through the center of the US and then they go further south. And there's the whooping crane, which is extremely rare nowadays. I think there's only like 20 or so left. Fact check me on that, correct me in the comments. But the sandhill crane and the whooping crane are the only North American cranes that I know of. But they're so spectacular, and their mating display, they like do a little dance in the marsh. It's so amazing. I have to give it high B tier. Next we have the avocets and stilts, Recurvosaustridae. I think that's one of the longest names, other than Phallocrocurus. Recurvosaustridae. Avocets and stilts are such cool shorebirds. They have this very ecologically adapted recurved bill that sort of goes upwards. So, and the stilt has one that goes straight, I believe, but they're such cool colorations. If you see one flying, it looks like a flamingo. On Salt Lake City, they actually gather in flocks of like thousands of birds. It's the most humbling thing, I suppose, as well as phalaropes. I'll get to that in a minute. I think there might be in Chiradidae, but since there's only 2 birds in this family, or in North America at least, are very unique, but they're all very unique. Let's give it a B tier, just below the sandhill crane. I want to save the S tier for my real favorites. Next we have the oyster catchers, which is just American oyster catcher and black oyster catcher. They catch a lot of oysters. They catch a lot of other stuff. I'll put it behind the avocet because I know they have really cool plumage, like orange bill, bright orange eye. Next we have the plovers, or plovers if you live somewhere else. This here is a black-bellied plover, Chiradidae, and it's black-bellied, semi-palmated, piping, snowy, Wilsons. I'm probably missing some other plovers in North America. Oh, American golden plover, Pacific golden plover. This bird is very bland. It's called a black-bellied plover because in the breeding season, which is only a couple months, they have black bellies. And I know they make cool noises. They can't all be in B tier though. Alright, let's leave it there. I'm locking it in for another 3 minutes, I'm sure. Next we have all the other shorebirds, which includes the peeps, the calidres, the dunlins, the semi-palmated sandpipers, which refers to the feet. The semi-palmated plovers also have, I forget what it means by the feet, but something about the feet. We have dunlin, sanderling, also the phalaropes. This is such a big family that includes so much. These are red knots over here, and actually has a tag because shorebirds are so cool. Shorebirds are greatly underrated because people think they're only at the shore because they're called shorebirds or some sandpipers. So they breed in the Arctic tundra, like super far north, and some of them winter as far south as like southern Chile, which is on the other side of the globe. They're such marathon birds that nobody appreciates them. They have to get S tier. Like, the rest of the shorebirds. Plovers do the same. They're getting A tier. And they also make such cool noises, but unfortunately they don't nest in everyone's backyard like robins do, so nobody appreciates them. So shorebirds, one of the most underappreciated species on this list, they get S tier. The phalaropes are one of the few birds where the female is actually the most colorful one, and the male does all the incubation, all the work with the kids, and the female phalaropes actually hang out. And they also gather in enormous, like hundreds of thousands of birds flock on lakes like Salt Lake City, especially Wilson's phalarope and redneck phalarope. And red phalarope is out in the sea. So these birds, and they make huge murmuration displays, as well as all the other species in this family. So next we have the gulls. Now, they think they're called seagulls. In reality, it's just an all-encompassing Laridae, which is gulls, and that also includes terns, actually. So like Caspian tern, common tern, gull-billed tern, royal tern, least tern, etc. I love sandwich terns just because of the name. This laughing gull, which is extremely common in the Atlantic coast, sincerely underappreciated, because if you really stop to inspect them, especially in like April when they're mating, they actually have interesting displays. And if this bird was like nested in the Antarctic, I'm sure people would appreciate them just as much as they appreciate emperor penguins. Just because it's not as elusive as an emperor penguin doesn't mean we shouldn't appreciate them. So I think just because they're so underappreciated by the world, high A tier, maybe low S tier. Next we have the loons. Okay, this common loon, Gavidae, are the hallmark of Canada, or the hallmark of wilderness. If you look up the sound of the loon, it's like, sounds like a little ghostly, mysterious noise that's in a lot of horror movies. Then that's just because this loon is so spooky, the sound, but it's so cool to hear in person. You actually need like 300 or something feet of water in order to take off, because their legs are so far back, because they're so good at diving. They dive for fish in the Atlantic and in lakes all across Canada, and even in the other hemisphere. So loons, you gotta give them credit, but they don't have quite as good displays as grebes, and I don't have as much of a personal connection to the common loon as some Canadians might. Good. Okay. Next we have, I think this is Wilson storm petrel. This barely I got a photo of, because they're only in the Atlantic Ocean, or just out in the middle of the sea. So as you might imagine, you have to be on a boat, and there's a few waves, so it's pretty difficult to get photos of that. I think it was raining too when I took this. As the name might imply, Oceanidae. These birds, they nest in the ocean. They're seabirds, which are extremely underappreciated. I think that might be a common theme with all of these birds, at least up here. So, and they nest like, I think of the Falklands. Somebody fact check me. They go all across all of the world's oceans, and they nest in one island, and then they just disperse all across the Atlantic or Pacific or all the other oceans. They're so cool, but I only have terrible photos of them, and I don't know too much about them. I'll give them low B tier. Next we have the shearwaters, Procellaridae, maybe. This is Corey shearwater. Shearwaters aren't quite as cool as storm petrels in my opinion, because they don't have that cool fluttering feel. They're not quite as cute from the photos I've seen, so let's give it C tier. Next we have the storks, Cyconidae. I think wood stork is the only stork that's in North America. They deliver all the babies, so I have to give them credit for that. But other than that, they're pretty much useless. Baby delivering is pretty useful, so I have to give it A tier. Next we have the frigid bird, which magnificent frigid bird, and I think great frigid bird of Hawaii, or the Pacific Islands. These are so spectacular to see. I believe they nest only in the ocean or on random islands in the ocean, and I haven't seen their famous red pouch, but they're called the man-o'-war. They're so spectacular to see. One of them did save my eBird streak, because I was out in the middle of the ocean, I didn't see a bird, and then this frigid bird gave me salvation when it flew right over the ship, and I got a bird that day, and I didn't ruin my 500 or so day eBird streak. So okay, next we have the gannets and boobies. This here is a northern gannet. solid E. And blue-footed booby, Galapagos, famous bird because of its famous blue feet. Brown booby is slightly less famous. They're all across the southern Atlantic coast. So they all have this super distinct shape. I think they're slightly cooler than shearwaters. Okay, now we have Anhinga. And I was surprised to learn that Anhinga is actually in a different family than the cormorants. So, go figure. But the snakebird, the classic bird of like South Carolina and Florida, just the southern US, of like swamps like that. Looks like the Loch Ness Monster when it sticks its head out in the water. I think cormorants are cooler. I really think cormorants are cooler, but they are still pretty cool. B tier and cormorants. I'm not even going to attempt to say that again. Okay, maybe I will. Phalacrosauridae. Good enough. Okay, next we have the pelican. Oh, I forgot to talk about them. Okay, they nest on enormous colonies. These are Brandt's cormorants in what's it called? La Jolla Sea Watch in San Diego, I believe. Although they do smell pretty fishy, like literally fishy because it's all they eat. But they're always out at sea. It's always a pleasure to see them. They get B tier. Just storm petrels got to go down. And loons. Okay, next we have the pelicans. Okay, pelicans. I know they're super cool, but I know everybody knows about them. Everybody thinks they're super cool or super annoying, depending on who you ask. These brown pelicans in particular, they dive and they go straight over the water. They hover and then they go straight down into the water to catch their fish in their massive pouch. They're super cool, but everybody gives them attention. I'll just give it an average B tier. We're moving on to the herons. Okay, great blue heron was one of the first birds that really caught my attention, as many people see great blue heron for the first time and they're like, that looks like a dinosaur, especially when it flies. You're like, is that a pterodactyl? Or day-a-day, which also includes the great egret, which is completely white except for yellow bill, and I think snowy egret. Yeah, all of the herons, I guess. Green heron. Oh, the bitterns too. They're also in this family. Least bittern, American bittern. All those birds. Although those love to hide. They make kind of demonic sounding screeches at the bottom of their voice. So they're really cool though. They're really cool. They're better than hingas. They're better than ducks. They're better than cormorants. Oops. And nighthawks aren't that cool. Nightjars are not that cool. Okay, let's go. White ibis. Okay, this is like classic Floridian bird. Always walks down the street, and also all across the Atlantic coast. They're super cool. I think they're in a few movies. This would be the perfect animated cartoon character because like pink legs, pink face, really cool bill. What more can you ask for with the Threschionornithidae? So, white ibis, really cool bird, but not quite as cool as herons. Okay, now we have the turkey vulture and the black vulture and California condor, I believe, is in the same family. I think they're severely underappreciated. Everybody hates them because in Europe, they used to think vultures were bad when they translated the Bible, so that's why they called it a eagle instead of a vulture. But vultures are actually so important for the environment because they're nature's cleanup crew. They eat rotting flesh, which nobody else would eat. They have such a cool digestive system that is able to digest that. They're super important to the environment, so they have to get S tier. Few people know that though. Okay, next we have Pandionidae, which is exclusively just Pandion haliatus, which is the osprey. These birds are, I think, an environmental success story because they came back after conservation, also known as the seahawk, which is the bird of a few sports teams. I think osprey, they're all across North America nowadays, maybe not 50 years ago due to DDT and other chemicals destroying their eggs, making them super weak. They eat a lot of fish. They look super cool when they eat a lot of fish, and in this position they hover over the water just like pelicans, and they dive straight down into the water. Actually, pelicans, I remembered, they're pretty rude. They get C tier. Okay, osprey though, they're not pretty rude. They can get A tier actually. I think they can get A tier. Next we have the hawks, Accipitridae, which includes obviously accipiters, which is Cooper's hawk and sharp-shinned hawk, and northern goshawk, or American goshawk nowadays. And this is the red-tailed hawk. This is a western subspecies. They have such variation. They're also quite important to the environment, and I also think this includes bald eagle and golden eagle, all of the eagles, I think. Fact check me on that. Tell me in the comments if I'm wrong. So, the red-tailed hawk, broad-winged hawk, red-shouldered hawk, all the buteos, short-tailed hawk, they get A tier. I like A tier. I like A tier for hawks. Yeah. Okay, now we have the owls. Enormous fan favorites. They're so wise and they look so astute on their nest. However, they are extremely elusive because they only come out at night. So it's like the perfect fairy tale or the perfect mystery story of the great horned owl, the barred owl, the barn owl, the short-eared owl, the saw-whet owl. The saw-whet owl is the cutest bird in the world, in my opinion. Look up pictures of the northern saw-whet owl. So, because I honestly agree with all of those statements, I think they're super cool. Now we have the kingfishers, which in the US is only belted kingfisher and ring kingfisher, and occasionally green kingfisher, I think. Maybe. Someone check me on that. In the Rio Grande Valley. And we don't have, actually, okay, belted kingfisher was one of the first birds that I remember growing up, flipping through Kaufman's Field Guide to the Birds of North America. This belted kingfisher caught my eye, and I really wanted to see a belted kingfisher. Unfortunately, never did as a 5-year-old or whatever. So, but once I grew up, I finally saw them, and they were so spectacular the first time I saw them. Because of my personal connection to belted kingfisher, they're getting A tier. Now we have the woodpeckers. Okay. I'm very fortunate to get tons of woodpeckers around me, and they will eat anything pretty much, any bugs. So all the invasive bugs they'll eat, such as the spotted lanternfly around the New York area. And also, they're cool birds because they can whack the tree with like 10 times more force than it takes to get a concussion at least. And I talked about it in our Learn About Birds pileated woodpecker video. Check that out right now. And their tongues wrap all the way around their face so they can really get into that tree to get all the insects. And they drill holes for other birds to nest in after they're done fledging their own young, obviously. They're so cool. They get S tier, absolutely. Next we have the American kestrel representing the falcons or Falconidae. So, American kestrel is my favorite falcon. It's also the only one I have good pictures of. The peregrine falcon is the fastest animal in the world, or fastest any living thing. Obviously, trees probably can't fly very fast. It dives at I think up to 250 or something miles per hour. And the bird's up here goes straight down through the water. And then sometimes it attacks shorebirds, attacks ducks, and they're so cool. They nest on bridges, at least in the eastern North America, wherever they are, and they're incredible birds. The kestrels, they have cool markings on the back of their head. They actually have 2 dots. You can see one of them here, which is sort of a fake eyes on the back of their head, so that predators to the American kestrel, such as larger hawks, think that they can see on the back of their head, so they won't attack from that side, which actually works, which is why they still have them. And they're so colorful. I don't know if you can tell from this image, but it's like blue and orange of the male. And they have those 6 sideburns of the merlin. The merlin's such a cool name too. And they're so colorful. I don't know if you can tell from this image, but it's like blue and orange of the male. And they have those 6 sideburns of the merlin. The merlin's such a cool name too. They get S tier. They absolutely get S tier. Above the vultures, I think. Okay, now we have the parrots. Now, unfortunately, these are invasive species in North America. They're all introduced through the pet trade. This is a Nande parakeet from Florida. So, unfortunately, they're not native anymore. There used to be a bird called Carolina parakeet, which which used to nest in around the Carolinas, and there used to be huge numbers, but unfortunately a few hundred years ago they hunted them for their beautiful green feathers, so there are no more native parakeets to North America. However, they are really cool, but they're invasive, so they have to get D tier, and it would be F tier if we had one. Okay, now we have the tyrant flycatchers, represented by none other than Tyrannus tyrannus, the tyrant of the Tyrannidae family. Eastern kingbird. Okay, these birds, some of my favorite, especially phoebes, elenias, pewees, empids, kingbirds. I love western kingbirds, maybe because Ken Kaufman loves western kingbirds, but they just sit there and they eat insects all day. Who doesn't love flycatchers? So they get A tier. Next we have the vireos, or Virionidae. This is a red-eyed vireo, sort of the most common vireo in North America, pretty much throughout the forest. In northern North America, at least, you can't go like 5 feet without hearing a new red-eyed vireo. Maybe more than 5, but you get the point. They're super ubiquitous across the forest nowadays. Sometimes it's annoying because they're out in the trees, they're saying, "Hello, how are you? I'm here, where are you? You can't see me, haha." They're just mocking you all day throughout the forest because they're high up in the canopy and you can't even see them most of the time. So I don't know, they kind of have attitudes. They're kind of sassy. They get C tier. Next we have the shrikes. Okay, these birds are so cool. I know I've been saying that a lot today, but this is the loggerhead shrike. And they have that mask and they have this hooked bill, and this is like the only carnivorous songbird. So super unique for a songbird to be a carnivore. So what it does, viewer listening discretion advised, I guess. What they do is they stand on barbed wire, they wait there for prey, and sometimes they sing a mock song to try and attract birds, that their target birds, like mourning doves or whatever, to their spot so that they can quickly come down, grab the prey, and then go on, stab them into the barbed wire, and then have a nice snack. So they're very interesting. They sort of backstabbing birds, but quite literally, and they are songbirds, and they look so sweet and innocent, aside from the bandit mask. I guess they're warning you, but they only nest in open habitats, and especially the northern shrike, actually both shrikes, are facing enormous habitat loss. And northern shrike nests in, I think, the Arctic tree line near around there, so they have enormous habitat loss. Next we have the corvids, and I had one of two options. I could have put a jay, or a very colorful corvid, or the other side of the family, the goth crows and ravens and magpies, all of those birds. But I chose to go with a blue jay because very famous bird. These are some of the most intelligent birds in the world, as well as the parrots. They will have their own funerals, like magpies are famous for doing that. Ravens are even known to say nevermore in houses in Virginia in the middle of the night. So corvids, I still think they're spectacular with that sort of crystal looking plumage on the back. They're such famous spark birds as well for a lot of aspiring birders or people just getting new to the hobby. They think blue jays are so spectacular, and crows too. They're also so underappreciated. People associate them with death, but they're also nature's cleanup crew along with the vultures. They will eat anything. So fortunately we have crows and ravens to do that as well. And let's give them high A tier, very high A tier. Okay, now we have the chickadees, titmice, parody. Okay, these birds are one of my favorites because a pair of chickadees actually nested in my backyard this year and a couple years ago and a couple years before that. So the Carolina chickadee, they're so cute. Like, you can't argue with that face, right? Very common backyard birds, so if you put out some black oil sunflower seed in particular, they love that. Chickadees and titmice certainly come to visit. So they're better than hummingbirds and Alaudidae, which is, I think that's just horned lark. Actually, it might be snowbunting and longspur as well. It might be snowbunting and longspur. These birds are in open habitat. They're in very steep decline as well. I don't know too much about them, but They're always fun to see. And horned larks, the males have little horns above that yellow face, and nothing too special about them. They're like your average bird. They're okay. They're alright. B tier. Now we have the barn swallows, representing our Hirundidae, which is all the swallows, which includes cliff swallow, tree swallow, violet green swallow, cave swallow, probably missing something, welcome swallow in Australia. These barn swallows in particular are my favorite swallow. They have these huge forked tails which look spectacular in flight. They undergo huge migrations in huge flocks. They flock around in thousands, sometimes thousands of tree swallows will gather in places like Cape May, and they eat tons of insects as well. So, A tier. A tier, yep. Bush tit and long-tailed tit, which is in Eurasia. They're adorable, but they're not quite as cool as chickadees and titmice, so they can get low B tier. Kinglets. Yes, I love kinglets. But they're super frantic. And golden crown kinglet is in the picture. Ruby crowned only occasionally has a ruby crown, and gold crest in Eurasia. This was in Sequoia National Park in the middle of a forest on a mountain, General Sherman Trail, with those massive sequoia trees in California. So this was like one of the only birds that was there aside from a raven. And these birds are super resilient because all they eat is insects. They're like 3 inches big. They're as small as hummingbirds, but they're really chubby because they have to conserve all that fat. And I think in the winter they have to eat like, 5 times their body mass. Fact check me on that. Let me know in the comments. So, Regulidae. And they have those golden crowns. It makes them look like royalty. At least the golden crown kinglet. I think it's a really good bird. A tier. Okay, now we have the nuthatches. Another common backyard bird. Loves walking down trees. They're just better than chickadees because they love walking down trees. White-breasted nuthatch, red-breasted nuthatch, pygmy nuthatch, brown-headed nuthatch. I think I got them all. So, really cool birds. Now we have the brown creeper, kind of similar to the nuthatch, but they blend in so well. I would bet if this picture was turned 90 degrees this way, you wouldn't even be able to see the bird because they're so well camouflaged. Brown creepers, or I guess tree creepers as they call them in Eurasia. Certhidae. Every time I do see them, it's so cool because it reminds me of winter. They nest further north, just like kinglets. They have to eat a ton in the winter, and they nest where the snow is. So some of them still winters in Canada. So not much insects there in winter. They have to rely solely on dormant insects and conifers. Okay, next we have the blue-gray gnatcatcher representing Polyoptilidae. Okay. Blue-gray gnatcatcher, California gnatcatcher. I'm missing a lot more. But these birds, they always look angry because they have those black eyebrows looking down. They eat a lot of gnats. That's good. But they always look angry. It's kind of scary. C tier. Next we have the wrens. Okay, this is another very common backyard bird, although they seldom visit bird feeders compared to the other nuthatches, chickadees, stuff like that. So Carolina wren, represented here, has a super cool song, Tea Kettle, Tea Kettle, Tea Kettle. And Bewick's wren, even cooler song. They have nice white eyebrow, supercilium, and they're troglodytes. They're hermits. They love to be hermits. So they're super distinct birds. They're friend-shaped as well. Let's give them just above the nuthatch and chickadee. Ooh, okay, this is the American dipper, which is our only dipper in North America, Cinclidae, and I have to give this S tier. This is the only songbird that can swim, or swim very well for long periods of time, and that's all it does. It's more closely tied to waterfalls than even waterfowl are. Some of them nest behind the waterfalls, and instead of flying, they swim through the rapids, and they only like the rapids. So when I first saw these birds, they were just swimming through the rapids, bobbing their tails, having a nice time. They're just like a perfect bird. Like, Nothing can compare to the American dipper. Next up, we have the sternity, and this is the European starling. When I first saw one, I was like, that's such a cool iridescent plumage. And even when they fly, and I think they look like a star shape. They're named after, I think, the spots on their plumage, at least in winter, summer, I don't know. So European starling, as the name might imply, are invasive species from Europe, so they can't be that cool. I think they're better than parrots, so let's give the invasive species D tier just because they're so bad for the environment. Next up, we have the catbird, mockingbird, and brown thrasher, or other thrashers too. The mimidi, and these birds are super cool because they mimic the sounds of other birds. Like, by that I mean they can imitate lots of different species. Mockingbirds are always fun to hear and try to pick out what bird they're mimicking at that moment. Catbirds, as you might know, is my favorite bird. And brown thrashers also have a 2-stanza song that's also mimicking other species. They're all around amazing birds. And next we have the robin, or robin representing the Turdidae, Turdus migratorius, which is all of the thrushes. So I put probably the most distinct bird, the American robin. Other birds in this family include some thrushes with thrush in their name, like wood thrush, bicknell thrush. Oh, bicknell thrush is in here, I forgot about that. Gray-cheeked thrush, Swainson's thrush, stuff like that. So, and also eastern bluebird, western bluebird, mountain bluebird, and Townsend solitaire as well. They're famous for their beautiful songs. Bluebirds are obviously very blue, especially mountain bluebird, which the males are completely entirely blue, which I think is beautiful. Varied thrush is, look it up, varied thrush is in the Pacific Northwest. I think it's an elusive bird. I've never seen one, but they have really cool plumage. And even robins. If they weren't so common, everybody would love robins. I mean, a lot of people still do, but they're very common. Some of them might nest in car tires because they're so resourceful. They get high A tier because they're awesome birds. Next we have the waxwings, Bombaciidae. So these birds, Cedar Waxwing and Bohemian Waxwing and Japanese Waxwing in Asia, these birds are complete nomads. They follow the fruits and they even time their breeding season with the time of the fruit. So they nest in later summer, way later than a lot of other birds, because most birds time it with insects, but Cedar Waxwings time it with fruit so that kids can be old enough to fly by the time the fruit are fruiting. So they eat, I think, 90 or something percent fruit, and they can even get drunk on fruit that's too ripe. So overall, really cool birds, really sleek plumage, really awesome waxy wingtips. Cedar, they love cedar berries, obviously. So I love waxwings. Let's put it there. I like that. House sparrow. Do I need to say more? Nesting locations. So horrible species that are not native to the United States, introduced hundreds of years ago. So not quite the best role models, house sparrows or old world sparrows. Fringillidae, which is all of the finches. And when you think of a bird, you might think of a finch, which includes obviously house finch, purple finch, Cassin's finch, as well as rosy finches, which are out in the mountains. All of the winter finches, including evening grosbeak, pine grosbeak, red crossbill, white-winged crossbill. All of those winter finches mean a whole lot to me. When I first saw red crossbill, the only bird that's supposed to have a crossbill, so they get A tier. They're such a diverse, colorful family. Darwin's finches, actually he really studied mockingbirds, but he's famous for his finches. Okay, now we have, so this is snow bunting and Lapland longspur. I guess the other one was just larks. So snow bunting and Lapland longspur, they nest in the high Arctic, like the very high Arctic, like tundra, and then they come down in winter to like beaches and other locations that look like Arctic tundra, such as the short grass. So I don't know much about them, but I'd assume they're important because everything's important in the Arctic. Now the sparrows. Okay, so at first glance, these birds look super boring, super brown, super tiny, super unassuming. Nobody cares about them, but I care about them. Song sparrows, if you listen to them, if you really pay attention to their song, they have such complex songs comparable to the Swainson's thrush or wood thrush or hermit thrush. Look up those songs right now. Let me know what you think about them in the comments right now. Song sparrows, they're so cool. And also all these savanna sparrows, chipping sparrows, black-chinned sparrows, salt marsh sparrows, seaside sparrows. They don't get enough credit. All of the New World sparrows, I should say. Not these pesky house sparrows. I love sparrows. However, they are a little slow sometimes. They aren't the brightest bird on the list. So, since they're not too bright in more ways than one, let's put it in A tier. Low A tier. Yeah. Okay, now we have the blackbirds, which includes red-winged blackbird, rusty blackbird, brewer's blackbird, and even all the orioles. So Baltimore oriole, Bullock's oriole in the west, hooded oriole, all those orchard oriole, all those cool birds, and even the meadowlarks, which you might not have guessed, which is, if you don't know what a meadowlark is, I suggest you search it up and let me know what it looks like in the comments so other people know. So all of these blackbirds, they're very closely tied to a habitat. The red-winged blackbird loves marshes. You definitely can't tell by this image on the tree, but trust me, they love cattail and reed marshes. The rusty blackbird, they love wetlands and muddy swamps in the boreal forest in Canada. And the brewer's blackbird, they'll follow cows around all across western North America and the open habitats. And eastern meadowlark, sort of similar, but obviously eastern North America, western in the west. And what else? Orchard orioles, they love orchards. So they're closely tied to a habitat, each of these birds. And, in the winter, birds like common grackles and all the other blackbirds that I mentioned, they'll gather in enormous flocks and they coordinate in flight, not quite as well as shorebirds or starlings, but they're pretty spectacular, especially when they fly straight over your house in flocks of thousands, maybe even tens of thousands. Sometimes hundreds of thousands of grackles will gather in one flock in the winter or fall or early spring. They're really cool birds all around. They get A tier. Next we have the warblers. Okay, enormous fan favorites, but very difficult to photograph or even get a good look at because they're always either high up in the tree or low in the brush or hiding behind leaves, and they're always hopping around. They're so erratic. Not quite as erratic as kinglets because they're a little bit larger. Such diverse family though. Let me list all the warblers I can think of.
Yellow warbler, black burning warbler, black pole warbler, black-throated gray warbler, black-throated green warbler, black-throated blue warbler, Townsend's warbler, cerulean warbler, my favorite warbler, Kentucky warbler, hooded warbler, Louisiana water thrush, northern water thrush, ovenbird, Swainson's warbler, golden winged warbler, blue winged warbler, golden cheeked warbler, hermit warbler, American redstart, northern parula, tropical parula, painted redstart.
There's so many warblers. I can't name them all. I definitely missed,
black and white warbler, chestnut-sided warbler, magnolia warbler, morning warbler, Connecticut warbler, Tennessee warbler, Nashville warbler, orange crown warbler, Lucy's warbler, Virginia's warbler, McGillivray's warbler.
Okay, I'm definitely missing a few, but you get the gist. There's a lot of warblers, and they're all so colorful. Yellow warbler, classic yellow plumage, and then black burning warbler has this fiery, flaming ember throat that glows, sort of, in the rain, even in the rain. It's just on fire all the time. Other birds like cerulean warbler, which is the color of a bright blue sky, and they're always by the bright blue sky in the canopy of trees. Impossible for good looks, but, I digress. Morning warbler, super skulking. Chestnut-sided warbler is always pleased to meet you. So all around, this entire family is one of the most diverse families, all with their own unique habitat, and very fun to see in migration. Some of them, like the blackpoll warbler, flies from southern South America. Some of them go straight across the ocean into the boreal forest in Canada, completely dodging the United States in like a 5,000-mile flight, and the bird's only like a few inches long. Very impressive migrants. They get S tier. Absolutely. Next we have the cardinals, grosbeaks, and allies. I think tanagers are in there as well. Some are in scarlet or western as well. Cardinals, classic backyard birds. They're all super cool colors, especially in South America, but they're all super cool colors there. They're classic backyard birds. I'll put them around here with all of those guys. Lastly, we've made it to the banana quit. And I was really debating this one because they're only occasional visitors to like southern South Florida. Like every year or two, a banana quit pops up from the Caribbean. But this bird is, I believe, a Bahamas variant of the banana quit. So they are basically warblers, but of the Caribbean, Traupidae, and I don't have much to say. They have a fantastic name. They have a fantastic name. They're getting B tier, or a little higher, Okay, now let's do a little bit of rearranging. I forgot to mention that tyrant flycatchers are the most birds in its family. So they have so many species under that name, Tyrannidae. So there it is, the complete bird tier list of all of the families in North America that I have pictures of. Anyway, so yeah, let me know what you think in the comments. If you want to make any changes, I will put the link to this tier list so you can make your own. If you make a video of you making the tier list, certainly tag me or make a comment on my video and I'll certainly check it out, and I might give you a shout out too. So certainly make your own tier list, and I hope you found that entertaining. This is Beary Birding, and I'll see you next time. One last thing before you go. In the future I plan on doing more of these tier lists, hopefully with the specific species in the families, and let me know what you think in the comments. And also, I might plan on live streaming these, so let me know if you want to see that.